He grew up in a town most people just pass through. One traffic light, two gas stations, and a diner that locked its doors at 8 p.m. sharp. This was rural Kentucky, a place where opportunity didn't knock, it whispered, and most folks never even heard it. His name was Jacob Turner. His father took construction jobs whenever they were available, and his mother cleaned houses. Some months were okay, but other months were so tight that Jacob learned, very early on, how to pretend that hunger wasn't really hunger. At school, he was the quiet kid, not because he had nothing to say, but because he had no confidence to say it. He wore hand-me-down clothes and shoes that were falling apart. He learned that being invisible was a lot safer than being judged. But deep inside, a stubborn thought kept nagging at him, a thought he couldn't quite explain. This doesn't have to be my whole life. By the time he was in high school, most of his classmates had their futures pretty much mapped out. Some would end up at the local plant, others would pack their bags, leave town, and never look back. And many would just repeat the same cycles they saw their parents live through. Jacob would listen quietly as his friends talked about plans he knew he couldn't access. College felt like a dream for someone else. There was no money for it, no connections to help him get in. His teachers always encouraged what they called realistic goals, but what Jacob heard was something different: low expectations. Then one afternoon, everything changed. He stayed late after school to help clean up for an event. There was a guest speaker, a former student who had grown up in the very same town. The man now worked a big job in Chicago. Jacob was just minding his own business, but he overheard the man say something to a teacher that stopped him in his tracks. He said, "I didn't escape this town, I built skills that people needed." That one sentence. It followed Jacob all the way home. It echoed in his mind, not escape, build. For the very first time, Jacob saw a path forward that didn't depend on luck. It only required effort. So, he started with nothing. Literally nothing. He didn't have a laptop. He didn't have Wi-Fi at home. So, he turned to the one place that was open to everyone, the public library. Every single day after school, he would walk the 3 miles to the library and stay there until they kicked him out at closing time. He started with the basics, teaching himself how to use a computer. He watched free tutorials on everything he could find. He devoured books on communication, problem solving, and business. He didn't understand all of it, not at first. But the important thing was, he showed up, every single day. While his friends were hanging out or relaxing, Jacob was practicing. No one was there to praise him. No one even noticed what he was doing. And that was okay. He wasn't doing it for them. When he started talking about his plans to leave town, people laughed. Not in a mean way, but with a kind of confident pity. "This is the real world, Jacob," they'd say. "Don't get your hopes up." Even his own parents, who loved him dearly, were worried. Fear has a funny way of disguising itself as concern. But Jacob didn't argue with them. He just kept his head down and worked. After graduating from high school, he got a full-time job to support himself and spent his nights continuing to study. He started applying for remote, entry-level jobs and online training programs. Most of his applications were met with silence, crickets. But then, one company responded. It was a short contract, with low pay and really high expectations. Jacob didn't hesitate. He accepted it immediately. He poured everything he had into that job. He worked harder than anyone else, determined to prove himself. And then, he made a mistake, a big one. A mistake that cost the company money. Just like that, his contract was terminated. Jacob found himself back in his room, staring at the wall, the silence deafening. He had failed. And all those old voices came rushing back. See, this is why people like us don't make it. He allowed himself one night to feel defeated, to let the shame and disappointment wash over him. But the next morning, he did something different. Instead of letting failure define him, he decided to let it teach him. He analyzed exactly what went wrong. He wasn't afraid to ask questions. He identified his weak areas and immediately started working to improve them. In that moment, failure stopped being this big, personal monster. It became instructional, it became a lesson. And that shift in mindset changed everything for him. Slowly, over time, Jacob started landing more small projects. He learned to communicate clearly with his clients. He delivered his work consistently and on time, and when he made a mistake, he owned it. He didn't make excuses. His clients started coming back. And then, they started referring him to others. A reputation for being reliable is worth more than gold. He reinvested every single dollar he earned back into himself. He got certifications. He bought better tools. He learned new, valuable skills. There was no flashy lifestyle, no shortcuts, just steady, quiet progress. Then came the day it all felt real. At 27 years old, Jacob signed a contract for a full-time remote role with a tech company based in California. The salary was more than his parents had ever made in a year. Combined, it came with benefits, with stability. When he called to tell his father, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, his dad's voice came through, quiet and thick with emotion. He said, "I didn't know this kind of life was possible for us." And in that moment, Jacob realized something profound. Success isn't just a personal victory. It expands what the people you love believe is possible for themselves, too. But Jacob never forgot where he came from. He started donating new laptops to that same public library where he had spent countless hours. He began mentoring students from other small towns, kids who felt just as lost as he once did. He spoke to them honestly about his struggles, about his failures. He told them, "You don't need anyone's permission to want more for your life. All you need is patience and the discipline to keep showing up." So, if you're watching this right now, and you feel limited by where you grew up, if it feels like the resources are unfairly stacked against you, if no one around you seems to believe in bigger dreams, I want you to remember Jacob's story. Remember this: your environment explains your starting point, but it does not have to decide your finish line. Because in the end, the world doesn't reward excuses. It rewards skills, it rewards persistence, and it rewards the courage to build, even when you're starting with nothing. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more content like this. Keep building.